Okay, ready, everyone?
Feel
Feel
better. Feel better.
Welcome, everyone, to the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board October meeting. I'm Sherry Rickel. I'm the vice chair. If you don't know me, I am filling in for Oliver because he is not feeling well, so he is not going to be joining us tonight. But he says hi to everyone, and he's very sad that he cannot be here. So as you know, this meeting's being recorded. I'll do a quick agenda run through. We have a guest speaker, Claire Mifflin, from the Center for Zero Waste Design. Then I'll have an update from Oliver. Was nice enough to type up some notes for me here from the DSNY stakeholder engagement meeting that we had last week. Hopefully, if Evan joins us, we'll have an update from the Borough President's office. We'll have coalition updates, membership updates, committee reports, and then we can do announcements in open floor. So with that, for those folks that didn't catch it, Elisa typed in the chat, please add your name, preferred pronouns, and what brings you to the meeting. And if there's anything you want to share with us today, feel free. And if you're a member of the SWAB or not. So with that, I would like to introduce Claire Mifflin from the Center for Zero Waste Design. Claire is an architect and systems thinker who led the development of the Zero Waste Design Guidelines through the Center for Architecture. The guidelines show how the design of buildings and cities is critical, especially for high-density cities for achieving zero waste. She founded the nonprofit Center for Zero Waste Design to work on developing and implementing the guidelines, starting with New York City. Claire will speak about the new advocacy campaign, Put Waste to Work, for vibrant streetscapes, green jobs, and healthy neighborhoods, developed in collaboration with BkSWAB. Welcome, Claire.
Thanks, Sherry. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen.
I can add too, if folks have questions and you want to type them in the chat, Liz is going to moderate the Q&A, unless you catch it, Claire, however you want to run, it's fine, but Liz will moderate.
That probably makes sense, because I'm sure we could all get very deep into questions, and maybe it makes sense for me to go through it first. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm an architect, and I led the development of the Zero Waste Design Guidelines, and those were bringing together city agencies, people working in waste, and the design community to really figure out how we can better design buildings and public spaces and streets and neighborhoods to get to zero waste. So yes, launching this new advocacy campaign, really feel that the time is right with the new mayoral administration coming in, and COVID just making people realize the value of public space and the need to get rid of trash and rats on the sidewalks. I'm also part of the Save Our Compost group, which has really emphasized to me how the city needs to provide space and resources to ramp up small-scale composting and regenerating of city soils. So yeah, working with the architect and urban design firm WXY, they generated these graphics, and we're focused on really the logistics, space, and urban planning side of this. We realize there's another stage that needs to happen afterwards, but this is really the design issues to transform the system so that it can work for all. So the slides have text, so I'm not going to read the text. I'm just going to go through first the call to action, then I'll talk a little bit about the strategy slides, and then the benefits slides. So yeah, just the emphasis is that we need a redesign so that our system works for everyone. And the point of this advocacy campaign is to call on New York City leaders to support it. We're looking for organizations to support it too, including the SWABs. So the plan itself gets into details of in 3 buckets: how we can circulate materials, so reuse comes before disposal; how we can compact and contain materials so they take up less public space, require fewer trucks, and attract fewer pests; and lastly, how can we compost organic materials to regenerate soils and bring health to urban ecosystems. So firstly, the circulate section, really about designing the urban environment for circular material flows. And I'm actually consulting in a building now, which really made it clear to me how New York City wasn't designed with any space. In fact, the super was like, yeah, the chute just went to the incinerator, and that's what happened till the 90s. So there's no space in the cellar for storing trash, and no kind of route to move the waste to the curb. And that's what we need to change. I mean, even for buildings that didn't have those incinerators at a building scale, they were at a city scale. So now we need to provide that space for managing discarded materials within the city at both a building and a neighborhood scale. And we need to ensure that that space promotes reuse, salvage, and repair first. So this in 4 sections here, promoting the salvage, repair, and reuse, developing the city infrastructure, integrate planning for deliveries and waste. Because if you think about it, if we're really moving towards circularity, there is no difference between an incoming delivery and outgoing waste. It'll be like reusable packaging that is dropped off and collected. And then incentivizing the waste reduction through policy. So the first one is like, how do we provide collection and dishwashing infrastructure for a citywide reusable Go container or cup program? Or how do we ensure that parks and public spaces all have year-round water bottle filling stations? How can we facilitate hubs to repair and salvage? Nextly, how can we all know we need more local infrastructure for processing organics, whether that's anaerobic digestion, composting, or making animal feed. So we need to provide that infrastructure. We also know that repair and salvage have such low margins that they can't afford space. Like Big Reuse have moved, I don't know how many times. So we need to subsidize facilities like other cities do, so we can have these eco hubs where you can have your salvage bricks so they can be put in a new building, or you can repair and repurpose discarded materials. Yes, and also if we start integrating the space for deliveries and waste collection, even at a building scale, if your package hub is right next to your waste room, then reusable packaging can be used and put back in the same place to be recollected. So we don't have to have so much cardboard, and we can just use repack or whatever. And the same for street design guidelines. You know, we have all these spaces for loading goods into buildings, but nothing for getting stuff out of buildings. So integrating that and incentivizing the use of low impact vehicles like micro haulers do, for example. And then the last one in this section is really about policy changes. Save as you throw, we all know that was suspended, but I really think as a program, especially if it was at a building scale, which is probably the easiest way of doing it, then buildings would have the flexibility to hire small companies like micro haulers for organics, or come up with strategies for donating bulk furniture, because they would have some funds to do that. And there's also a lot that can be done to require new buildings are designed properly for waste management. There's so much education and technical assistance to people who manage or design buildings for energy reduction. We need to do the same for waste. And then policies really for construction and demolition waste, and to support deconstruction rather than demolition, and to ensure that buildings are designed for the future circularity of building materials. Like, just for example, we don't glue our carpets down. We can have them floating and remove them and repair them and make sure they can be made into new carpets. So there's lots that can be done at a policy level too. So that's the first section, circulate. The next section is contain, and it's talking about how can we get trash bags off the streets, basically. And I'm sure all of you are very familiar with how tough it is to walk down the sidewalk in some neighborhoods. So at a minimum, you know, just rationalizing the collection schedules would help. Like my neighborhood in Brooklyn has 3 times a week trash pickup for 2 family blocks, whereas it's the same in the financial district where they've got hundreds of units on a tiny sidewalk. So changing that, so you have more frequent services on the avenues where they're bigger buildings in higher density neighborhoods, makes a lot of sense. And then adjusting the truck trips. At the moment, that the biggest storage needs are for buildings that recycle well, because you get trash pickup 3 times a week currently and recycling only once. So if you're good at recycling and you separate your organics, you need a lot more space than if you just put everything into the trash. So we need to incentivize people to do the right thing and reward them for it. Equipment to reduce the volume of waste. We all know about the huge heaps of cardboard on the street that could be baled before we all get to reusable delivery packaging. There's also equipment that can process food scraps, various different ones to devolumize it. Some creates organic fertilizer, which can be picked up by a company and used in regional farms, for example. Moving to semi-automated trucks. I mean, this is a huge lift and will require piloting, evaluation, and collaboration between all city agencies, but they do it in Paris, Madrid, cities with similar density. They have more frequent collection sometimes, but rear loading trucks could have hoists, or when they get the new trucks, they could have automatic loaders to collect the wheeled bins that are maybe around 1.5 cubic yards. Then we'd need to organize that there'd be space to stage them at the curb. We'd have to coordinate it with parking. We'd have also, it'd be great if we had more roll-off containers in buildings, but the guidance isn't there for architects. They're requiring 25-foot headroom and huge amounts of space that no architects are really doing. So ensuring that containers of waste can be collected and we can get bags off the streets is a big lift, and it has to be a coordinated plan to do so. Also neighborhood scale collection as well, shared waste containers like they do in lots of Spain and throughout Europe, for example. We have a good case study in the guidelines on The Hague, actually, where they had a seagull rather than a rat problem and put shared submerged containers in the sidewalk, one on kind of every city block, and people brought their waste to it, and there was no more bags on the street. We could also combine small retail, the mom and pop shops, because on those kind of main streets, it's often a real problem for the businesses as well. And if that small scale waste could be combined with the residential waste, you'd only have to have one set of submerged containers. And probably we'll need to pilot this first with surface containers and then move it to submerged. But that's, you know, they've done similar things in Paris with piloting in the parking lane and then moving to more permanent containers. We also need to incentivize large developments to consider roll-on, roll-off containers like they did in Battery Park City, for example. And we have to make sure that there are convenient drop-off sites for all recyclable waste, including textiles, e-waste, and all types of organic waste, from your fats to your meats and dairies to your vegetable scraps and to your leaves and horticultural waste too. Pneumatic tube networks are also something I think should be piloted. The Highline pneumatic tube projects in the guidelines. And then NYCHA is looking at doing a retrofit in one of the housing developments, and they make a lot of sense. In Singapore, they're requiring them for the large new developments. Hong Kong have a lot too. And then the last section is about regenerating the city's soils. I realize that this won't take all the food scraps that are in the city, but if we reduce the amount of food we waste, composting could take quite a large proportion of them. And I also think the value of regenerating city soils in itself should not be forgotten, especially after things like Hurricane Ida. Not only does it retain stormwater, makes our trees healthier, it also filters it, so there's less pollution that goes into the bay. So that can be done by working with parks to make sure. I mean, I understand parks saying they don't want parks to be used as waste management, but places like Battery Park City again and Domino Park they want food scraps. Their horticultural directors want food scraps to heat up the compost of their horticultural waste and to regenerate their soils. So if we did that for all parks and private soils in the city, it would take quite a lot of the food scraps, and it would have to be high quality. So there's a lot of piloting and evaluation to see which are the best collection methods, what's the technical guidance, how can this work? And then there has to be support and incentives, because far too much of it is done by grassroots volunteers with no real support. And lastly, this is the last slide on compost, just make sure new developments use the compost, or DEP uses it for stormwater management, or they integrate it with opportunities for urban agriculture on rooftops and in green spaces citywide. So those are all the strategies. We're kind of developing a document that gives more detail about the rationale for each of them. And then lastly, we just list the benefits. Of course, this plan would require leadership at a mayoral level, collaboration, pilots, and evaluation, but it would make it affordable and efficient system, and it would make it easy for everyone to reduce and separate their waste and not require the huge amount of motivation it now requires, either at an individual level or at a building management level. And I'm sure many of you know these benefits, but we know how great it would be for businesses not to have trash on sidewalks, and for all of us, and just life in public space. I mean, if we could reduce the amount of waste in delivery trucks stopping at every door-to-door, every building, we could really reduce the noise, danger, and congestion on the streets. We're going to illustrate a little micro hauler on this street. We haven't done that yet. But the impact to air pollution as well. And as I was saying before, really increasing the health of the nature within the city is a huge thing. And yeah, the more I have spent time watching Department of Sanitation and private haulers lug those bags into the back of trash, it's not a safe job. Over 60% of them lift over 11 tons a day. Like more than half of them report over a week off with back problems. And I've been taking videos in London and other places, and whenever I do, the sanitation staff cannot believe that in New York City bags are lifted by hand, and all say it would never be allowed here because of health and safety. So just making waste hauling a lot safer and better for the people that have to do it, and training people for all sorts of new roles in the circular economy, really, rather than waste in repair and salvage and everything else. But I also firmly believe that a lot of people want to be able to do something tangible to improve the city, and providing this framework where everybody can compost and separate their waste and repair things will go a long way to engaging all sorts of grassroots movements, and not all sorts of entities will spring up if we provide the framework to allow that to happen. And yeah, there's something just so tangible about helping people reduce waste that is not there with energy and just really lets everyone participate. And yeah, articulating the benefits to the city, I think, is major, because as you all know, they're so spread into many different benefits that it's not just like, oh, we're reducing carbon. No, we're doing the air quality is better, it's less dangerous on the streets, there's economic benefits, there'll be more green jobs, it'll be cooler, the buildings will be easier to manage. There's so many different benefits that they really need to be counted in order for policymakers to take it seriously. So it just ends with a call to action, and I would love to take any comments or suggestions for how we can help move this further in the city. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, I see some cheering for those that have the video on, and some comments happening. I should also, I didn't get to say it earlier, I wanted to welcome folks. I see some new faces, I see some folks from the other SWABs, and we had been initially promoting this as an all SWAB event as well. So thanks to those who are joining us. And I know, Claire, you might be asked, and I know you're willing to present at other SWABs as well. So this may be the tour of the
yes, it's so much easier when it's all virtual too.
But with that, I'll turn it over to folks in the, via the chat if you have questions, and Liz.
Yeah, so you could type your question into the chat or raise your hand to ask Claire. I guess I could start out. Claire, thank you for that wonderful presentation. So much dense, interesting information. Can you give us a little background about the project? Sounds like it's developed in collaboration with WXY. And can you tell us about the agency that it was presented to in the process of?
Sure. So, I mean, Claire from WXY, Claire Weiss, she was involved in the developing of the guidelines as a volunteer, along with many architects and urban planners. And I think she, as an urban planner, has just become very frustrated that I think she's doing a plan for downtown Brooklyn, for example, and there's no real solutions for architects and designers to keep waste off the street, because New York, DSNY only really pick up bags, so you can't containerize it, and the requirements for the railroads are so big, and they're only really for trash. So she's frustrated that there's no solutions for designers, and she was like, we've got to do some kind of advocacy. I've also was looking for grants to do this kind of work, but then at some point realized that the time was, I didn't get the one grant I applied for, and realized time was short, and I just needed to get the ideas out there and see if I can get some momentum behind them. Was also inspired by Transportation Alternatives 25 by 25 agenda about repurposing quarter of streets for people. And I think Claire was involved in that as well. So that was kind of the impetus for doing it. I mean, my work since the guidelines have come to unearth all the barriers to changing the system. So I really wanted to just put that into like, this is what we have to do to make it work for everybody. If that answers your question.
So you developed it and it's going to stakeholders for review, or?
Yes, we're almost done with stakeholder review. Department of Sanitation and DOT looked at it. We're having a meeting with city planning, but really we need to get it to the press and to the notice of Eric Adams' team and city council members. But yeah, so we've got a list of stakeholders that we'll share it with once we launch it, which will be probably in about a month. But yes, now we can take comments, and yes, the SWABs were obviously someone I wanted to share it with before release.
Definitely, and we can promote it through our social media channels and be involved in getting the word out.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, so Betty, would you like to ask your question? Oh, okay. Betty, are you unmuting?
Unmute. Okay.
Okay.
So I guess I have, hello, do you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I hear
Okay.
you.
Great. This was a fabulous presentation. I'm an advocate with School Gardens, and there's a lot of connection to the school garden movement, but and community boards. So how are you connecting with other advocacy groups, and how are you getting your voice to community boards who have to present their ideas to the city? So that's one of the roads to getting this stuff recognized. And it's fabulous work, yeah.
No, that's a good point. I mean, currently we're trying to get a website together so we can have a full website that kind of incorporates this deck, but more background to the strategies, and then asks people to join the coalition, asks people for, say, guest posts, like why we joined the coalition, with some information about what they're doing, like School Gardens would be perfect for that. And then taking it from there to try and get publicity and more coalition members. That's kind of where we're at, but I'm open to any suggestions of how we can get it further.
Right. So it's just kind of late in the process because community boards have to present their ideas or strategies by the end of October, and there's a process for committees and voting. So maybe it wouldn't happen this year. It wouldn't, but to get on as many community board agendas as you can, so that the community boards can be supporters of your platform.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought that one through and that schedule through. Yeah, if any of you are active in community boards, I mean, I'm happy to share it at this stage if it's helpful at this stage, but yeah.
Well, I think now the community boards are finalizing their proposals for the city budget for fiscal year 23 or so, like going out. But there's a lot of value to going to as many community boards as possible within this year, just so that people start hearing this, that it isn't just about getting trash off the street or collecting scraps, but your broader vision, which is very comprehensive and like fabulous, but to get that voice out, because people are saying, well, we need the brown bins in our neighborhood, but that's only a little part of what you're proposing. So get your voice out there.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Michael Reeser. Michael, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I mean, well, first of all, yeah, get around to as many community boards, get that presentation around to as many community boards as you can. And going through the environmental committee is a great, you probably have to meet with them first before you get a space at the full board meeting. But that's a good strategy right there. But I was wondering, did you say that you are quantifying the barriers by going around and talking to the stakeholders?
I said I've identified a lot of the barriers, and that's really through my work developing the guidelines, especially the design barriers, like why spaces are not designed for containerized waste, for example, or barriers in terms of zoning or code barriers and things like that. And that kind of additional data on barriers and challenges we've identified will be put on the website with more detail on the strategies. Yeah, we visited over like 40 buildings and talked with supers and followed the path of waste from where it was set out to collected. So really understanding the barriers for the brown bin system for supers as well is something I feel I know pretty well. So not quantifying, but understanding quite a lot of them.
I mean, talking to sanitation and parks, for example, to discuss the obstacles to composting and a mechanized collection, for example, would be.
Yes, I've had a lot of talk with sanitation. They always bring up the snow plow, but that's only on the front loaders that can't have the snow plow and the containers. And then they say they put an automated arm for the organics bin and it was too slow. But of course, it was just one little arm lifting one little bin. And when you watch the fully automated bins in London, actually, the guys were showing me just how fast their new trucks are. And I'm getting some videos of that to put on the website too.
Mhm.
So yes, there needs to be talking with the agencies, but I think it really needs to come as a kind of directive from above that they have to work together to make it happen. But yes, city planning we're talking to next, and of course they're probably the most interested in making it work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kendall?
Thanks, Liz, and thanks, Claire. Thought-provoking presentation as always. So the first is a comment. I posted in the chat a link to a company called Underground Refuse that I'm beginning to do some work with and introducing them to New York City agencies for possible pilots in the city. They've been talking to DOT for a couple of years about the curbside program and are ready to ramp that up a bit. So welcome your comments and questions about their approach to making trash disappear underground for containment purposes prior to collection. Claire, two questions. One is, did you consider any other titles than Waste to Work? That one doesn't strike me as the best way to sort of capture people's attention, but I'm just curious if there were other candidates that you considered.
There were other ones we went through back and forth. I'm happy to share some of them. Yeah, I would be happy to get people's feedback on what they think would be better. Put Waste to Work was kind of like both make it work and put it to work for the city in terms of helping to regenerate soils and getting it out off sidewalks. But yeah, I think I have a list of the other ideas we had.
A long time ago, those swabs promoted the concept of recycling works as a way to capture the city's attention around the economic development potential for materials that were collected. So I'm familiar with the naming process and trying to come up with ones that resonate and get people's attention. The second is that your menu, as always, is enormously comprehensive and broad. How do you prioritize where to start with it? And particularly as you talk to stakeholders and get their help in sort of focusing what's doable, actionable, as opposed to unworkable or conceptual or immediate versus future, I guess, is another way to sort of look at it. How do you do that?
I think you're right. That needs to be put in there, like in terms of when I'm looking at these strategies and the responsibilities and what it would take to get each one done, I need to look at, okay, which is immediate, which is long-term, which needs to be piloted first. And that will be part of the next steps of developing it for sure.
One of the metrics you might sort of add to the framework is that what you describe are a lot of sort of design elements that have aesthetic benefits and some operational benefits and whatever else. But you don't attempt to, and maybe for good reason, to sort of say these are the ones that have the most greenhouse gas emission reduction benefits, and use that as a method of sort of prioritizing which things to tackle first.
Yes, I mean, partially I alluded to that in the last slide. I think there are so many other benefits as well as greenhouse gas reduction that just doing greenhouse gas reduction is I kind of want to quantify. I don't want to negate all the other benefits. I agree it's important, but it's often really tough to get to as well. Like looking at what are the greenhouse gas benefits in salvaging and reusing bricks, for example. It's really tricky. The life cycle analysis, exactly where they draw their boundaries. I mean, even reusable to-go containers, you know, are they counting the plastics pollution in the ocean and how that's decimating whales and the greenhouse gas reductions provided by whales? No, it's just such a tiny, any good way to quantify greenhouse gas, any acceptable way is so kind of conscribed, especially, I mean, it works for energy generally, but yeah, it's tough. But I mean, it's a good point because that's what policymakers listen to a lot. But I just, when I start along that road, it's tricky. I did actually look at greenhouse gas reductions of reducing food waste compared to local law 97 carbon limits, and found that a big building with a lot of food service actually could reduce more greenhouse gas emissions through reducing food waste than their energy quota. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that, you know, the kind of finding is important for policymakers to understand.
Yeah.
You know, just thinking out loud that, you know, at some point next year, I guess the state's, you know, Climate Action Council is going to come out with its comprehensive set of policy and program initiatives, and understanding how your proposals sort of overlay and overlap or don't with what they're going to be proposing would be something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yes, I probably don't have enough experience in policy and need to get someone who knows a little bit more about that to get involved. I mean, Ben will help too, I'm sure, but yeah. Thank you for those. And yes, the submerged containers were in there. Did you see?
I did, thank you.
Jasmine, would you like to ask your question? Sorry, I missed you initially.
Yes, hi, Claire.
Hi, Jasmine.
I love your presentation. I've seen it a few times, and and I'm just really excited to see where this goes and what will be implemented next by hopefully DSNY. But my only question is, since I'm in Southeast Queens, I'm a member of BkSWAB and part of the compost committee as well. And I would love to present your presentation, but just show like it in a perspective of single family homes. Because as much as I would love for the brown bin system to continue out here where I'm at, but it kind of seems a little bit tedious to send trucks out to individual households to pick up food scraps when it could be used for something else. And I've seen that in your presentation and how you talk about certain areas where people can drop off their food scraps, as well as some of the community gardens in our area that are also picking up food scraps are the parks that are interested in composting as well to help nurture our soils. And I would just love to have a deck to present to them that kind of appeases that crowd versus more of the congested areas.
Yeah, okay. I can look into that. I mean, yes, I think shared collection is definitely the solution for lots of the less dense neighborhoods. Yeah, email me separately and I'll see what I can pull for that particular type of density.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Claire. One other question to kind of round things out. You know, a lot of, I feel like this conversation about like, you know, people wanting to compost and then DSNY, like there's a lot of like blame, like DSNY says people are not doing it right. And the people are like, well, you know, they're blaming like the poor system. Like, how do you think about like design as a way to kind of solve those issues of, you know, that seems so like kind of like these big obstacles that
Yeah, I think it's
progress.
design. I agree with you. It's design and it's piloting and evaluation. So like one thing we looked at, we came across a building in Harlem, Martin Robertson's building, where he was letting people drop off like their little organics caddy on the way out of the building and get a clean one. And he emptied it into the brown bin, or his staff did. That's actually a case study in the guidelines there. But that got us thinking about the options for having a kind of micro-hauled caddy system where people drop off a caddy of organic waste in a kind of enclosure in the parking lane, for example, and a micro hauler comes and collects it. And because it's in an individual caddy, you could have feedback telling people if it's contaminated, for example. So like pilot that, see if the people who really don't like dealing with the yuck factor or cleaning their caddy at home, if that works for them. Similarly, a large building with not enough staff, like dealing with the brown bin is more than just cutting off your trash bags and putting them on the street and forgetting about it. And you know, DSNY can argue it's no more space, but it is in a big building and it is more labor. And so like piloting solutions for large buildings, like maybe trying the big dry aerobic biodigesters that turn it into organic fertilizer, try it, see if it works. I mean, there has to be a lot of piloting to see what works, and brown bins do work well in some circumstances, but I really don't think it's going to be a one size fits all for the city. So yeah, I agree with you that designing different solutions, really looking at what are the issues, what are the barriers, what are the challenges, how can we solve for them? I mean, that's what designers do the whole time. And then they pilot it and they evaluate it and they make it better and they try again. And I think that process really needs to happen.
Right. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Greg?
Yeah, I just happened to be down at Bay Ridge on Sunday, and they had this incredible, there's something called a Narrows Botanical Garden. Incredible. I had no idea Brooklyn had 2 botanical gardens, but there are no community gardens in Bay Ridge. I mean, literally. It strikes me how unevenly distributed up in northern Bedford-Stuyvesant, like every block has 1 or 2. In some cases, an entire block is got almost the entire block is a community garden. So I think that I keep coming back to how do we implement this stuff? I mean, there's such diversity between the incredibly dense high-rise scenarios in Manhattan versus the very low-rise in Staten Island and the mid-rise. And I'm just mystified. How do we tackle this in a sense that there's such a diversity in this city?
Yeah,
I mean,
sometimes I think even like turning it to the demand side for compost to tackle. So there's loads of these grassroots groups and community gardens who want to compost and they just need more resources to do it well often. So in that, we kind of know the successful solutions at that level and at that density. So if you support them, then you start looking at, okay, these high density blocks in Manhattan, yeah, there's no way they're going to have enough community gardens to process all their organic waste. So what other solutions are there? And I think you're right. It's just looking at, we've done some various calculations of how much organic waste per city block and what you can do for that. And some organic waste, especially from, say, commercial food businesses, may be better suited being turned into fish food, for example, and it's very uncontaminated. Or if it's really oily, the biogas is great, or anaerobic digestion can work in some circumstances. So I think it's a first phase of seeing what the waste is, seeing how you can make it less contaminated, and then seeing what it can best be used for, and trying a few of those. I think we really need to be open to pretty much any solution at the moment.
I mean, it's like, we need like 59 plants for the 59 community boards, you know, because there's everyone. I mean, comparing Midtown Manhattan to Staten Island is like, they'll just laugh at you, Staten Island, you know, and
Well,
vice
I
versa.
kind of do it by often try and figure it out by zoning density. I mean, I think, you know, there's similarities in high density downtown Brooklyn and Manhattan and
Yeah,
whatever,
Long
you know.
Island City now.
Yeah, Long Island City.
Thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you all. I really appreciate everybody spending the time and giving me feedback. And if anybody wants to give more feedback, I will put my email in the chat here. Yes, I'm happy to get anybody's ideas, because I'm a designer and I don't always know how to make things happen.
Great. Thank you so much again. I, of course, invite you to stay for the rest of our meeting if you'd like. Understand if you've got other things you need to attend to, but you're welcome to stay. We are going to, and thanks to everyone for your great questions and input. It helps all of us, I think. So I'm going to move on in the agenda. Oliver sent me some notes. Last Monday, we had a stakeholder meeting with DSNY to talk about the return of curbside composting. So a couple of things, just numbers wise, they had in total about 55,000 signups that were received as of like mid September or to 9/20. It was like the week before we met. 36,000 of them are enrollments, i.e. they're within the 44 districts that are eligible, and about 18,000 were incomplete or outside of the 44 districts that are eligible. So I'm just sharing some numbers they shared with us. 11,000 signups are from buildings with more than 10 units. Of these, 75% are from tenants and therefore require DSNY to follow up with them and or the building management, and added, you know, that's a lot of work and following people and connecting and trying to get in touch with those that signed up and getting the right information to get to their management company. If I understood correctly too, some of the 18,000 that are incomplete are also from those tenants, because anything where, you know, somebody didn't put an email down for their management company, they can't just like move them forward and they don't have all their information. As you know, as some of you know, maybe not all of you, the plan for this rollout has been they can't do all 44 districts at once. So they were looking at the number of signups in August, addressing that, making their decisions about which route or routes, but it turns out to be one route to start first. And that's going to be Brooklyn CB6. So that had almost twice as many signups as any other district across all 5 boroughs. Runners up were BK 1 and 2. And I thought there was one Manhattan one. I'm looking for his notes. The Manhattan one that's got Stuytown in it, I think was also in the like closely behind, or the next level. So 20% of the addresses in Brooklyn 6 signed up, And then the next three, oh, I'm sorry. The next three districts that were at or around 10% were Bronx 8, Manhattan 7, and Brooklyn 1. I have to look at that. But anyway, there's definitely more work to do. The remainder is below 5%. So all of the other community boards were at 5% or below. So moving forward, there's still no threshold number or percentage of signups needed to trigger the service resuming in that district. It's assessed on a case-by-case basis, taking into account the number of signups, the percentage of addresses, and the percentage of units covered within that group. And I know that the last cutoff was going to be the end of September to determine November starts. So Brooklyn 6 is starting in October. I don't know if anyone's on from 6. Yes, Rhonda, do you know
Tomorrow.
an actual date?
Tomorrow they're collecting.
Oh, cool. Well,
So-
congrats.
I know. So I'm thinking about doing a standing at my bin for, because a lot of people got their bins taken away. And I thought about standing at the brown bin in my house because I have a compost service that I like and it's going someplace that I know it's the right place. But standing there and just like saying to people like, oh, you might want to take that rubber band off or watch the stickers, or maybe you want to store it this way, sort of making like an exchange, information exchange for a certain period of time. Anyway, that's an idea if anybody else is in a district, in a zone where you're collecting.
Rhonda, how were you notified that it was starting?
I got a text from DSMY.
Is that it?
I also got an email.
And were those effective for you in terms of explaining what was happening? And
It gave you a link on the text. I didn't really look at it very closely. I was just like doing a lot of stuff, and they gave me a link in the text to say for you to look when your day was. And before I even had a chance to look, they texted me today and said, tomorrow's your first day. Don't forget to set it out.
did they text you through the DSMY app, or?
It's let's just see. It's a yeah, it's a number. It's a 929-499-2100. I don't know
Okay.
if that's an app or.
No, I mean, DSMY has their own, sort of app for reminding people about when they're set up for collection.
Yeah, it came into my phone as a text,
Okay.
as a regular text. Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing Michael also said that you got an email and the super got an email as well.
Yeah, see, also, I live in a building that I don't own. And I just signed up for it without asking my landlord. And
Are you less than 10 units?
yeah, so you can do that. Is that right?
I think so.
Clearly not reading all the instructions.
That's what I
9
understand.
units or more.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you're 9 or less, you can sign up and they'll just use you as the contact. But then if it's 10 or more, it has to be, they have to have an agreement
Approval.
from
well-
either, I understand it to be like a board member, if it's possibly a co-op or condo or management, from what I understand.
Oh, good.
Hold on, I see your question, Michael. Brooklyn, about 20% of the addresses, that's what I understand for Brooklyn 6 signed up. So I don't know if there's also, I'm not as familiar with all the areas, if there's single family, because that could be one sign up. If there's a, 40 unit building, that's another sign up. So I believe it's addresses.
Oh, because Michael, you do collection in CB6. Do you find it hard to believe because you don't think you get that much traffic from inside the district?
Yeah, I mean, I am no longer collecting the food scraps in Carroll Gardens, but sorry, but I mean, and you know, the turnout was great. Maybe it's because, maybe that means like, if, you know, my one address where I live is 50 units, so maybe that's 50 addresses.
Mm-hmm. But we don't have that many high rises. I have a cynical supposition about it, which is that I know that CB6 before at least went to the waste management to make a slurry and process it locally at the biodigester in Newtown Creek. I'm just wondering if they're like, well, we know we have a market for it if it goes there. I mean, it might be that, and that's not so cynical, I guess. They're doing something with it.
I think the ballot box is stuffed, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
The fraudulent election.
Yeah. Definitely.
No,
Yeah,
I do know.
but I agree. When I saw that number, I was surprised too. That's a huge percentage, given how large our community districts are.
mhm.
Yeah, I can get clarification on what, if one building with 50 units, is that considered 50 addresses or that considered one address out of this 20%? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I made a note to try to clarify.
That's a good.
One thing, yes, and you should continue to sign up. They're still working on outreach. This is going to be an ongoing, you know, rolling program, and getting more routes going. One other note from the meeting is that there'll be no specific targeting of outreach at this point or promotion to certain specific districts. They simply want as many signups as possible across the board. And Oliver's words, are keen to promote drop-off sites in areas where the brown bins will not be returning. So if there's no, if they're not one of the 44 districts that was eligible based on, you know, past eligibility, then they're working to promote getting some food scrap drop-offs going. And I understand one more note was that the level of interest represents, or was generally reflective of the level of participation of you know, what was collected in the past across the other districts. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's the update I have from that. So yeah, we'll keep doing work. Yeah, Liz.
One other thing I want to say, I also heard that before organics were picked up in the dual trash and organics trucks, but now it's going to be like in a single, like just organics truck, because I guess that's why they're looking for a concentration of people. So that, but then at the same time, that makes the program more expensive because it's sending out one truck just for organics. So that means that the prior budget wouldn't be enough to bring it back to all the districts that they had before.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that. So they didn't share that. One question I had is if the information I just shared was available. I think, as far as I know, they were going to work on like sort of public information, you know, public announcements, but I don't know if that's actually been done yet. They were working on that already last week. So I haven't seen anything necessarily. And I know, Kendall, you put a link in about the report from the CBO, but I don't think that's necessarily, that's separate from this, but we can talk about that in a minute. Jasmine, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to state about the food scrap drop-off sites that they are interested in starting. Some of that stuff will be sent to places that do just compost versus going to the biodigesters. So that's one thing that I think isn't really clarified very much as to where your food scraps are going to through DSNY. And I just wanted to clear the air that, you know, food scrap drop-off sites, some of it does go into helping your parks in this area versus going to a biodigester.
Thanks, Jasmine. A significant difference in where it goes is how clean or uncontaminated it is. So the stuff that's at the drop-off sites tends to be very clean and uncontaminated, right, Michael? And so that material can largely go to compost facilities, but the material collected at curb needs some level of processing to remove bags, remove other contaminants, whatever else. And so it's less likely to go to a compost facility, at least initially, until it's had some initial processing done of it.
Yeah, certainly the stuff that comes into the curbside, I mean, to the drop-off sites, at least in Carroll Gardens, I can tell you is really clean. All of the sites that the city takes its, the brown bin material to, it all goes through the Tiger, which is this machine that extracts all the plastic bags from the waste. So if plastic bags go into the compost, it's not a problem. If people put their compost in plastic bags and put it into the brown bin, it's not a problem. In fact, they want your bin to be lined with a plastic bag. Stuff that goes to Newtown Creek, it's like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan because Newtown, it's flaring off the methane, which is good that they're not just letting methane go directly into the environment, but that, and they do use as much as they can to power the Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant, but a lot of it is flared off, and that is a waste. That's criminal.
I thought the connection to the National Grid line was at the either active or at the verge of being active.
So did I.
I mean, it's taken a decade, and they haven't done a public announcement of it, but I thought that's pretty much operational, Michael, for injecting the excess biogas into the grid.
I would like to see that because I was told that when I started working at Grow NYC 14 years ago.
Well, it was certainly true 14 years ago, and certainly true even a year ago. But I think it may finally have the connections finally been activated.
Wow.
Why is that a secret? I mean, I think they would have the PR all over that.
I thought they announced it. I thought that there was an announcement of it, like at the end of 2019, was it, Kendall, or 2018, 2017?
It wouldn't. It would have been at some point this year, and I think
This year, okay.
Yeah, so I'm glad you checked with DEP on the status of it, but it was finally getting done, and I think they were in part embarrassed at how long it had taken. But so it goes.
If you check on that, and I would love it if you would share that information.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. There's a question, does Carroll Gardens use the salt lot for collecting? Michael, do you know where the stuff from the collection at Carroll Gardens goes to? I don't know specific. Oh, you're still muted.
Yeah, some of the stuff from Carroll Gardens goes to the salt lot. Most of it goes out to Governor's Island. The salt lot has very limited capacity, and it's a great site, and you can drop off at the salt lot 24/7. But it doesn't have huge capacity there. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, before we go away from community composting for 1 second, I realize we're behind on time. Kendall, I just wanted to highlight that you had put that link. There was a report that just came out today.
Yes.
Can you give 2 seconds of background? I know we have some new folks, so just in case people aren't aware of what that is. And
sure, and sorry, I don't have a direct link, but it should be easily findable. The city's independent budget office, the IBO, does these reports on a regular basis about, various things. They've always done a bunch on waste and recycling related. They've done some on organics in the past. This was a pretty thorough, very deep analysis of the economic aspects of curbside collection of organics. I think maybe 8 or 10 pages in total. And it literally is, pretty dense analysis. So thanks, Claire, for adding the link. It's a PDF, and thanks, Sherry. So at any rate, it's worth a look. I mean, it's a lot to quote unquote digest. It clearly says that getting to the point, if you're going to use cost per ton as the primary metric for evaluating success, then it's going to take a heavy lift and a long time to get to that point with the Curbside Organics program. And it sort of compares it to the cost of collecting non-recyclable waste and the cost of collecting recyclables. So that's just context for taking a look at it. It's probably worth a discussion by one or more of our committees at some point. And the IBO staff, the analyst involved, has generally been available for follow-up discussions as well.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move us along to Evan Burr from the Brooklyn Borough President's Office.
Hey all,
Welcome,
great to see everybody. Only have one quick update from Borough Hall, and that is that in spite of the fact that the numbers are actually looking much better now, thank God, there are still no plans to put in-person meetings back active again at Borough Hall, unfortunately. But I'm going to keep you posted about that. Hopefully, we can get at least one in, before the end of the year. We'll see what happens. So I'll keep you posted on that. Also, I'm in a meeting actually on Thursday with National Grid, so I can ask them about that, the Newtown Creek question.
That'd be fantastic.
Afterwards, yeah, I'll let you know. I'll shoot you an email, Sherry, afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Coalition updates. We just have, these will be quick. So the Save Our Compost is looking to prioritize a push for mandatory citywide organics collection. I mean, we've been talking about that. So that's going to be, I think, the next push as of right now. And the Reusable NYC Coalition is hopeful of a skip the stuff bill hearing in October. And that's Intro 1775B, making single-use items from food outlets available on request only. And I don't know if Liz or Lisa, if one of you has the link, maybe Oliver put it in the notes he sent to us for that Intro 1775B, in case anyone's interested. And then they're also phone banking to get more co-sponsors if anyone wants to join on the 13th or 18th of October. And there's a document there too. So we can share that. Membership update. I don't have any update yet. I need to follow up with you, Evan. I will. But
did you
for
hear,
folks that are
sorry, Sherry, sorry to interrupt. Did you ever hear back from Sarana about that?
No.
Okay.
Not
All right.
yet.
All right. I'll check on that one for you also.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we have one membership application pending.
Right.
And for folks that are interested, I'm going to put a link in the chat that has details of how you can become a member and the requirements. And of course, we'd love to have you and, to grow our representation. Next is committee reports. And let me see. Okay. First is Legislative Committee, again, from Oliver. Leadership update. We are delighted to announce that Rhonda Kaiser will be the new chair of the Legislative Committee. Yay! With support initially from Dylan Oakley, who is a past chair. Yay! So that's fantastic. A big congratulations and thank you to Rhonda. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you. His second note is the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection is proposing a new penalty schedule to implement local law 64 of 2021, which creates restrictions on single-use plastic beverage straws, stirs, and splash sticks, collectively single-use beverage plastics. Comments are due by 10/13, and there will be a hearing the same day, so we'll be preparing comments this week for a vote early next week. And that vote will be an email vote that'll only end up going to members. So that's why we would love to have you all become members so you can share your voice on things like this, which we have to end up doing between meetings sometimes. Okay, I'm going just down the list. The Outreach Committee, we met last month in September and are still working to get more city candidates to fill out the questionnaire. So we did a round of emails and some Twitter, and we have two more that have filled it out. But one of the things we were focusing on was trying to actually get a solid list of the candidates, which we got from the Board of Elections, but now to focus our outreach on all of the candidates, not just Democratic ones that won, all of the candidates that are still in the running. So we're working on that. And I don't see Anne on. I know she had a conflict tonight, but I think Anne represented the SWAB at Clean Up Crown Heights event yesterday. So I was curious to hear about that. I haven't heard any feedback yet, but I think it was nice here. I was in Connecticut, so I couldn't go, but seemed like it was a great day to be outside yesterday. So, so we had that going on. The Organics Industry Committee, Greg.
Right. So as Betty alluded to, this is kind of like the make it or break it big month for the community boards, where they have to present their formal request to the city council. So I think it'd be a good time to kind of do a quick rundown of what we know. We have, as you know, 18 community boards in Brooklyn, and we have representatives in most of them, and I have not heard from some of them. Is Alyssa on the call tonight? Bertie?
I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, how you doing? What happened on your community
At
board?
CE1, I never got a response back, and I reached out privately to the chair of the environmental committee.
And what, via phone, email, or?
I did phone message and I did 2 emails.
Okay. Well,
So
there
I
you
can
go.
I can do it
Yeah,
one more
only do
time.
what you can do.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that. Betty, what's going on with CB2?
Okay, I unmuted. Hi. Yeah, so our environmental committee also has health, social services, and liquor licenses. So they don't focus as much on the environment as maybe we'd like.
Liquor
How
license.
can I say that gently? I'm colleagues with the chair of that committee, and we're working on a sentence or two. So we might not be bringing it to the full board. I'm not quite sure where in the process, but we're working on a few sentences where we recommend that in areas where the curbside isn't going to be starting, that there be drop-off sites, near subways and so on. So we're trying to get that into our district needs. Yeah.
Right,
And I'm working
okay.
with him on the language for that.
Excellent, excellent. Susan Frazier? You're with CB3. Have you had any connection with them? It's Betsy, Crown Heights, Clinton Hill.
Not yet. I have to, yeah. I have to
Just-
work on that. Sorry, Greg.
Okay, all right. I know Oliver had several of the boards that he was trying to reach out to, and I got an email from him that he's, as you know, is COVID and he's a little incapacitated aside from being in England. But he did say he would follow up with them as he had a chance to do so. Is anyone on 6? Rhonda, is there anyone else on that? I know you've been really busy.
I haven't, and I wonder if they're gonna put money into it since I don't. since
Yeah, I mean, they did
that's
get
where
the curbside, so
Yeah.
it's kind of, and they do have like probably the only processing centers in Brooklyn among the, aside from Newtown Creek, that is obviously.
Right.
Anne was supposed to look into Sunset Park, which is 7, and she's not on the call. And I sent her a note. She hasn't responded. I'm on 8. Sent an email to the chair of the committee, which like in 2 has is environment, sanitation, and traffic. And well, it's not as busy as the alcohol permits or liquor permits, but traffic is very busy topic. Bike lanes, don't want to ask. So we get smushed down to the bottom of the pecking order. But I did have a nice chat with the district manager, and they're very aware of it. They're going to try definitely put something in the budget request about more drop-off sites and composting capacity in the board. So she's definitely going to get it in there. I wasn't clear from our list. Is it Kendall or Oliver involved in 9? Kendall, do you have any connection with the board over there?
I live in 9. I don't have any direct immediate connection to the board.
Okay, so I guess Oliver was going to deal with that. Board 10, I couldn't make the Crown Heights Brower Park because I was down in Board 10 talking up the local board down there about the whole environmental problem, composting and so on. And it doesn't seem to be a whole lot. I just spoke with John Kemp, who's our liaison with the board. He has not been able to get any feedback from the board down there in Bay Ridge, Board 10. So that's going to be one of our tougher nuts to crack. And Vandra has taken the lead on about 4 or 5 boards down in that southern tier. And Brooklyn, Vandra, do you want a feedback on what's going on down there? Are you still here? Did she leave?
I think she had to go to another meeting.
Oh,
Great.
Well, I know she did send me an email that she has meetings scheduled with several boards down there. And 18, you may remember for the older members, Nancy Walby, one of our longtime old members, is on the board in 18. So she should hopefully carrying some weight for us down there. Liz, what about 14? Any feedback?
They said, thank you, we will consider it. And I have to follow up and just find out how much of it they will consider.
Okay, I
But they
think they're,
confirmed receipt.
at least they're going through the procedure of acknowledging they got the request. So that's at least something. I did send a draft of our outline proposal to Joanne Lewis in 17, who some of you may remember attended meetings with our board for quite a while. And they acknowledged they sent it to her. So that's as far. They won't give us any direct contact with her. We don't have it from what I can tell. So yeah, anyways, Southern Brooklyn, I think, is going to be a challenge generally. Anyone else have anything on the community board outreach? Ben?
I just wanted to say that even though this statement, it's called, I think, a statement of district need, is due to the Department of City Planning, October 27th or 29th, sometime the end of October. We should consider this an ongoing process, not like, okay, we didn't get in by October 29th, that's the end of the world, because we should always be trying to speak, I think, at these committee meetings or at the full board meeting if possible, and just continue our message. I think that's the best we can do.
Betty, would you be able to share your statement with us at the organics meeting? So maybe we could all just be saying the same thing ongoing, going forward.
Sure. We're in the process of writing something, but basically each board was asked to highlight the three biggest problems, and none of it is going to be sanitation. I mean, the boards are saying the problems are affordable housing, transportation, density. At least that's like in downtown Brooklyn areas, and maybe some other things. So, I mean, those are the big areas like safety, things like that. So there's like each district gets to highlight three of the big problems or challenges. And then they have about 40 some budget requests that they can make, which runs the gamut from like libraries to schools to, you know, everything else, you know, in the public arena. So if we can get like one statement in the 46 or so, I think that would be great. But it has to be based on each district's challenges. Like some of the districts might feel that storm resiliency is a problem, you know, the flooding, or, you know, whatever their issues are. We can't just say across the board that this is everyone's problem, even though we believe it and we connect it to climate change. So
Yeah.
I'll send you guys, like, I'll send to Ali or Shari whatever statement we come up with, and then maybe you can share it with the others.
I think it just would be great if we just started this process, and it might not happen this year, as you said, but you know, maybe they'll just get used to hearing from us. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the good news is, if you want to call it good news, is that these climate shocks, if you want to call them that, are just going to keep getting more frequent and more intense. Like this 3 inches of rain we had a few weeks ago, and 12 deaths. And I mean, you know, we don't know what it's going to be. No one anticipated this, people dying in their basements, drowning. I mean, that was like, what? I mean, really? I mean, Sandy, really? I mean, these things are not predictable, but I think we, you know, SWABs can use this as leverage. You know, when people start saying, well, you know, our biggest problem is affordable housing or crime or safety or transit. I mean, when you have people dying in their basements of flooding because of the sewage situation is, you know, not to be Machiavellian, but we need to use this stuff. And I think that, you know, we should all make it a point to attend our committee board meetings so they start to know us. I know as a board member, I pick up the phone and I call my office. They know who I am because I've been on the board 18 years. And they're like, yes, Greg, we're going to put something in there. You know, we know what you want. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I think that just showing up is a big thing. So.
Agreed.
To say something, as far as connecting composting to climate change, I believe it's going to be a big lift, because when you just tell somebody, yeah, paper is compostable too, and they, what? What? It's so hard for people to understand basically what composting is, to then try to connect it to climate change. I think that's gonna call for really skillful education. Check.
Yeah, deep education.
Yep.
Yeah, methane in landfills and trucks traveling 53 million miles every year back and forth to landfills. Those are, I mean, not obvious, but real, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Phillips,
Frederick, please.
Frederick, hi, Frederick. Yeah, I totally agree. It's very hard to connect, like throwing out your carrot scraps to people drowning in their basements, you know, like would my carrot scraps have helped that problem? So yeah, that's a big leap. But I did some outreach with the DSNY outreach group in Brooklyn, because I wanted to hear like what the person on the street would say about all of this. You know, we can talk about it all we want, but what is the person on the street that is saying, hey, have you heard about curbside and so on? And in our neighborhood in Borum Hill, which is right near Gowanus and NYCHA, what was striking to me was most of the people, or many of the people who live in the the row houses, the brownstones, the small buildings. They've heard about it, or they've signed up, or they've asked their landlord to sign up, or they will. But the biggest thing to me was the people in the NYCHA who say we don't have any systems for anything, and people are just throwing garbage all over the place.
Yep.
And that's a whole other thing. And a lot of people live in the NYCHA developments. So maybe that's something that's beyond saying, you know, for our advocacy, it's beyond like, oh yes, we should all compost, we should do this, we should have the drop-offs. Some people told me that they always put their garbage in a chute, their regular, you know, all their trash, and now they can't, and they're all flummoxed, like what to do, and you have to carry it down, and you're disabled, and is somebody going to pick it up? I mean, they're at a different level of education and capacity about how to deal with their trash. At least the people I've spoken to. You know, I shouldn't generalize, but people I spoke to.
I mean, NYCHA is a whole nother world. I'm in the advisory board for the Albany houses, and they have so many just basic maintenance issues, like getting a
Yeah.
toilet replaced, getting electric door locks on the front doors of the building and not worked in
Right.
decades. I mean, are they going to worry about separating their carrot tops? I mean, yeah, if they don't get
Right.
mugged on their way to the first floor, you know, I mean, you got to deal with that. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. I think that we have to obviously fund a NYCHA hugely.
Well, it's also not a one size fits all solution. I mean, one NYCHA development may have a different solution from another because each community varies, you know, with
Right.
engagement. And, you know, they've tried a whole bunch of different things. We've got Bridget Vicenti and John Johnson doing their wonderful magic. And then you've got different pilots. You've got, you know, in Red Hook, you have them with the garden there, and Green City Force getting, you know, residents to bring in the equal weight. They get equal weight of produce back from what compost they bring. Just like there's just like different pilots going on all the time with that. Also, I mean, there's all kinds of ideas and things being tried, but it does need to accelerate. It's like, come on, let's get this moving.
Maybe the new borough president, the incoming borough president, Antonio Reynoso, maybe we could persuade him to appoint a composting czar, maybe Domingo Morales or someone.
Nice.
Who could sort of
maybe Frederick Phillips.
Bring this all, pull this all together.
Yeah.
Frederick, there you go. You
Frederick
made a good
Phillips.
czar, Frederick. But I'm just thinking that $3 trillion, you know, infrastructure bill, that's the kind of money we need for NYCHA. We can't be, I mean, it's not just a patch. This thing has been neglected for 50 years. They've been abandoned and no maintenance. And so, I mean, this is not something that the SWAB is going to fix, the elevators and et cetera, and so on and so forth. The amount of people I see from the projects in my neighborhood buying bottled water, it's insane. I mean, they're just millions of gallons of bottled water because they have lead in their pipes. I mean, these are basic infrastructure issues, guys. So,
Right.
anyway, I don't want to take up too much time, Sherry. There, you know, we
No, that's okay. Actually,
passionate over here.
We have the yeah, we can talk about NYCHA in a minute, but do you have a meeting coming up, Greg?
Yeah, it's the fourth Tuesday, and we missed the one this past month because we all forgot about it or something. But the fourth Tuesday in October is the 26th. Okay, so I'll try to make a note to send a reminder out, but the 26th is our committee meeting, 6:30, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all for the updates. I know it's a lot of tracking and following up with people and sending emails into the unknown sometimes, it seems like. And the outreach committee, we're supposed to be the second Thursday, but I need to email you guys. I might have a conflict. So it'll be an upcoming Thursday this month, might be the third Thursday. And only because I'm still talking, then I'll turn it over to you, Liz. The NYCHA committee that is organized by BkSWAB, and I sit on for Brooklyn SWAB, because our last meeting was off due to the Labor Day holiday. We haven't actually met for the NYCHA committee. There's a meeting this coming Thursday, so I don't have any new updates other than I think Rhonda already mentioned that, you know, the Wagner Houses project that has, you know, Domingo from Compost Power, it has Inner City Green Team, Bridget and John Johnson. So they are full on working on stuff and their pilot's going. So I don't have any new updates on that, but it's been going now for, oh, it should be 2 months in, as far as I know. I think they actually started collecting at the very end of July or early August. So the next one, I'll have a bigger update for you guys at the next meeting. Liz, events committee.
For the events committee, I had sent out a poll to see who would be interested in doing getting drinks in person at Hunky Dory, which is Claire Sprouse's zero waste cafe bar in Crown Heights. And it looks like the options were Friday, October 8th or Friday, October the 15th at 6 p.m. And I think we're going to do the 15th because that had 7 people instead of 6 people on the prior week. So with the democracy majority in action, it's going to be the 15th. So I'll, I guess, set up an Eventbrite and we can share it with anybody else who might like to come. So yeah, the plan is to meet at Hunky Dory on Friday the 15th at 6 p.m. And then Ann Basson actually told me that unfortunately Claire's restaurant is going to close at the end of October. I guess it's not doing so well with the pandemic as a lot of restaurants are. So, but we'll get to go there while they're still open. So, and then we are going to have an events meeting, I believe, on Tuesday the 19th, and I'll send out the invite for that as well. And we'll be talking about planning part 2 of environment, race, and waste conversation. And we'll be soliciting ideas for that. So that's it.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, back to Oliver's notes for executive committee. We voted to sign on to a letter presented by the BkSWAB on behalf of the National Recycling Coalition requesting AOC to speak at the National Recycling Congress in November on the importance of waste reduction and effective waste management. No word on whether it has been sent or if a response was received, and Oliver is going to check with Amy Martman from the BkSWAB and report back. So that is our update there. Other than that, it's announcements and open floor. Manhattan SWAB has meetings coming up. Queens SWAB have meetings coming up. The Bronx SWAB is working to find, right now, they usually meet the 3rd Thursday of the month, but that conflicts with some of their community boards. So they're working on picking a different date. So that's where we are at. Our next SWAB meeting will be on November 1st. So that's all I have. If other folks have anything, Kendall?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is the council committee held a hearing this morning, sort of an oversight hearing with DSNY about street and sidewalk cleanliness, which has been a major concern over the last year and a half. So it's always a reminder that that's first and foremost the priority issue for council members and those of you involved in community boards. There was a bill also heard in the context of that by Councilmember Drum that would, as I think it would ban placement on the sidewalks of any type of movable advertising. So A-frames, whatever else. I have no idea whether that's going to get any traction or not, but it was heard this morning as part of that. The second is that the National Recycling Coalition Annual Conference virtual is in early November, followed the following week by the New York State Recycling Association Conference, which will be a hybrid virtual and an in-person. And the two are sort of linked this year. NISAR is the co-sponsor of the National Recycling Coalition's annual conference. So if you want any more information about that, you can find me or whatever. So, okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Upcoming events? I'm sure there's many, as it's fall. But we good? All right. Oh, Liz, yes.
I wanted to just share like an anecdote. My friend who lives in CB6 in Park Slope, I was like, congrats, you know, you got curbside composting back, and she lives in a unit. It's like I think maybe 8 or 10 units, so like a 4-story brownstone. And you know, like people in her building are professors and, you know, highly educated Park Slopians. And she was like, oh no, we didn't sign up for the program. We have enough trouble putting out the trash and the recycling. You know, nobody wanted to touch that compost bin. It was so gross. So, you know, here's an example of somebody who has access to the service, but because of, you know, like dysfunctional building like issues that, you know, a lot of people face, like they're not going, you know, they're not even attempting to do the program again. So, you know, a lot of people have problems with the basics, not just, you know, multi-unit buildings. And, you know, trash is such like a loaded topic, you know, and that's why I guess to the conversation that was going on by email, you know, it's not quite like recyclables because, you know, you can't just put it out and forget about it. It stinks. It has to get cleaned out. So just thinking about that, how, you know, somebody who has access to the service is not using it, you know, and if these people are, you know, educated working professionals, you know, like what hope is there for other people to do this successfully? So just some food for thought.
Thank you, Liz. I feel like it's you know, share with your neighbors, convince them of all the good reasons to do it and reduce waste in the first place.
Yeah,
Like,
it's such
you
a
don't want to
steep.
deal with the stinky stuff. I know we were just away over the weekend, and we take, you know, most of our food scraps with us. Actually, we bring them back down here when we're somewhere that doesn't have composting, because we're driving and it's okay to, you know, we have the space to do it. But it also reminds me when we grill things like fish and things like that, how, you know, stinky that can be in your garbage can. So I appreciate even more not having that. So
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, I travel in Park Slope, and I have seen recently that at least the people with the brownstones, they are moving their brown bin into a prominent place. So maybe this is just the block that I frequent that you know, that have signed on, but there seem to be some movement in at least some of the Park Slopers actually enthusiastic or at least willing to get back into to composting or properly disposing of their food scraps. Check.
that would be
Yeah,
interesting to see how it goes.
as gross as the brown bin is, I just feel like it's like how much more rat bait a black bag is that has food in it. But that's hard to, it's hard for, it's a big hurdle to really get people to understand that.
Yeah. That's why our work continues.
You know, the DSNY had this program, and I got one of the yellow, orange t-shirts where they were doing door-to-door canvassing to try to, they'd pick a neighborhood and go to door to door to try to educate the homeowner, the householder, the public on composting, how to do it, answer the questions, how to comply with the sanitation, with the collection, the curbside collection from sanitation. But COVID drove a stake through that. And evidently with the reduced funds that DSNY and the city will be allocating to composting and curbside collection, I guess that program, that initiative might not be coming back anytime soon. Check.
Well, actually, that was the Make Compost Not Trash, right, Frederick?
Yes.
Yeah, they, one of the things, and you guys are all welcome if you don't have like Allie's email or Big Reuse's email. If you guys know of events that are coming up, fairs or street fairs, any other sort of thing going on, like the Montague did a, Sunday social a couple of weeks ago, and I connected them with the folks from Big Reuse, and they were there with that. I was surprised, but with the orange Make Compost Not Trash. So they're not necessarily exactly calling it that like they did last time, but they're definitely still using the orange stuff and getting the word out there. Because if they can come, they will, especially if it's in, we're BK2, so it's an eligible district. And then that's how we were able to connect with the Cleanup Crown Heights. So they're not, they invited the Brooklyn SWAB to join and talk about this composting and the SWAB, but then I connected them with Big Reuse as well and said, we should have these guys there talking about the curbside program where it's not eligible there. So I think they were focused on food scrap drop-offs, but there's going to be more of those opening too. And I see comments about those, more are supposed to be opening in the next couple months. So we'll hope that continues. So, and I'm not reading the chats. I hope you guys are, but I agree, Frederick. They are working on outreach as much as they can, but they're also trying to, figure out they can't, it's a small team. So any information you have to share, we can gladly send over. And if they can make it, they will.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, they want to, it can only help, right?
Absolutely.
So to have the outreach people doing the outreach and getting the numbers going. So, yeah. Okay, I'm just reading Robert. A comment about biking to collection sites. I think people definitely do that. I'm sure folks that have worked at collection sites see that. Would folks who do drop off food bags at NYCHA housing and elsewhere be willing to pick up food scraps at the same time? That's a good question. I'm sure it depends on their capacity. If it's a community garden, maybe. If it's not, I'm not. They'd have to have somewhere to go with them. And then, Rhonda, you have a longer note.
It was copying about the Red Hook Garden where they
The exchange.
where they do the exchange, because
Somebody else, Shen Ru had emailed in. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but had messaged me about that as well. So
Me
that's
too.
great. Thank you
Me,
for
me
posting.
too. Yeah, but yours is different. You mentioned the Wagner houses.
So the
Sherry.
Wagner houses is right now. They got a grant and they are working on, and they've hired folks. They're working with Green City Forest. There's a whole program going on that just started. They did their kickoff at the end of July. So they've just started to raise awareness. There's a 3-bin compost program up at the Wagner houses that Domingo has got several folks now hired. He's got a staff of people working on that. So it's a lot going on.
Oh.
I'll
Here's
see
a-
if, go ahead.
Here's a list of farm NYCHA programs with this kind of programs on the Green City Forest website. You just have to scroll down a little bit. It says it's got unlisted. Wagner is at the top and Red Hook House is at the bottom, but there's you know, Howard, there's 3, 4, 5, 6 total so far.
Cool. Yeah, and that's one of the things. So Domingo has a separate grant from what I understand. He's, you know, he won the David Prize, and then the other grant is through Inner City Green Team. So they're connected for that, but Domingo is also working on a whole, he's trying to get compost bins set up with folks that, you know, live in the area as well. It's not just like him going wherever to set it up. He'll help for sure, but he, you know, training people to actually do the work and collections and stuff at that site. So he's been working on that, and he's close to being in all 5 boroughs, but he might not be yet. But he's working very hard at getting his message across. So thanks for the links, guys. Cool. Any other thoughts or comments? All right. Thank you all once again, and we'll send our best wishes over way to Oliver in the UK, and hope he gets better soon. And thank you all, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good night,
Until
guys.
next time.
Night.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Good job, Sherry.